Shalom, all praises, blessings, glories and honors to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Racha Kodash. Double honors to my elder apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone who have taught me this truth, as well of men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy, to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom are scattered in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. And to you I say Shalom, and Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Ratazah. This lesson is edifying. In the news, from the Yahoo Finance, IMF chief economist, worst is yet to come for global economy. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, downgraded its outlook for the global economy next year based on the effects of the war in Ukraine, global inflation that requires interest rate hikes, and a slowdown in China. In short, the worst is yet to come, and for many people, 2023 will feel like a recession. IMF chief economist Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas stated, the IMF, which is the primary financial institution of the United Nations, now forecasts global growth will slow next year by 2.7%, down from 2.9%, estimated back in July, and down from 3.2% growth projected this year.
Well, the IMF has downgraded its global economic growth outlook to 2.7% next year, with growth in the U.S. seen at just 1% in 2023. The fund's new global outlook sees more than a third of the world economy contracting this coming year, with the European Union and China also continuing to stall. On inflation, the fund sees price rises peaking late this year but remaining at elevated levels. Joining us to discuss the report is Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas, the IMF's chief economist. We've also got Yahoo Finance's Jen Schomburger joining in on the conversation. Pierre, it's good to talk to you today. You know, I'm thinking about these so-called stormy waters you've described in the report, whether it's the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the cost of living crisis, what's happening in China. These have all been headwinds that you've been watching throughout the year. To what extent have they accelerated in the second half of the year that leads you to this downgrade?
Well, it's certainly the case that some of the risks that we had flagged in earlier projection rounds, in particular in July, but even if you go back to April, have started to materialize. I mean, the energy crisis that results from the Russian invasion of Ukraine is perhaps the clearest one, where we see this incredible toll it's taking on European economies right now. And also the fight against inflation that is proving quite challenging. Inflation keeps going up still. I mean, we're expecting that it's going to peak soon and then start going down as a result in part of actions by central banks. But it's proven both more persistent, more elevated, and also broader. It's not just energy prices that are going up. It's what we call core inflation that excludes energy and food prices is also pushing upwards. And so that's something that complicates the task for central banks around the world. The final factor in our forecast is, of course, the slowdown in China. That is maybe there's a little bit less of a downward revision there. I mean, that's something that we saw a sharp slowdown in the second quarter of the year. And going forward, zero COVID policy is certainly leading to some localized lockdowns and confinements are affecting activity, and the weakness in the property sector is also another factor.
Pierre, Jennifer Schomburger here. It's great to see you. It seems like the global economy is really being stretched here, perhaps on a string. You mentioned that a third of the countries will contract in growth this year or next. We've got the war in Ukraine. We've got interest rates going up globally. You mentioned the slowdown in China. We just saw the services sector contract in September for the first time in 4 months. So it just seems that it's not going to take much to push it over the edge. What do you see as the odds of the global economy tipping into recession next year?
Well, we certainly flag a number of downside risks in our report. Some of them you mentioned. I mean, the fight against inflation could prove more difficult than we expect at this point. We could have more energy price shocks. Markets could certainly experience a lot of stress, and associated with that in parts of the world, the strength of the dollar is an important factor. So we try to put all of this in an assessment of the risks around our baseline. And what we found out is that there is about a 25% probability that growth in 2023, global growth, could be at about 2%. And 2% is a very low number. We only had that about 5 times since 1970, and every time we had this, if you look, it's 1973, the oil price shock, 1981, and the Volcker disinflation, the 2008 financial crisis. All of them are they are stuck in our collective memory as times of difficulties. And there's a 10 to 15% chance that actually output growth could be even lower than 1%. Now, 1% is an interesting marker because this is at the level at which global output would remain stagnant per capita. And so that would be an economy that is not growing at all globally.
Pierre, you mentioned the strength of the dollar, a big concern, something we've been watching. I mean, what we're seeing are major economy currencies here, whether that is the yen, the euro, the sterling, see huge swings on the back of the dollar strength, but it's the EMs that get hit even harder given the dollar-denominated debt. How are you looking at that risk being elevated even further, given that it doesn't look like the dollar is going to pull back anytime soon?
Yes, there's been a lot of strength in the dollar. Actually, what's interesting there also to point out is the strength of the dollar has been particularly important against other advanced economies. So the Japanese yen or the euro or the sterling. So more so than against many emerging market economies. In fact, even some emerging market economies, if you look at Brazil or Mexico or Peru, their currency is appreciated against the US dollar. So it's more against advanced economies and emerging market economies. But in part, this is also because appreciation of the dollar is very painful in emerging market economies. So a number of them.
Why is that? Because the US dollar is the world leading reserve currency. And most countries have to buy their imports using the US dollar. They first have to use their original currency and buy US dollars so that they can buy their imports. But if the US dollar is too strong, it'll be a lot more expensive for them to be able to do so. And that's why a lot of countries are trying to move away from the US dollar, because it's too expensive. And not to mention, it's also losing its value, because the only value the US dollar has is the global community's trust, because the US dollar is extrinsic, meaning that it has inherent value. It's not intrinsic like gold and silver.
Had already started tightening monetary policy, raising their policy rates, adjusting course, if you want, for their own economies, and found themselves in a different position compared to, say, the European Central Bank or the Bank of Japan or the Bank of England. But this stress coming from the dollar are really important. They play out through multiple channels. They increase inflation in the rest of the world because a lot of goods are invoiced in dollars, and they also
There you go. A lot of goods, they require the usage of the dollar.
Increase inflation in the rest of the world because a lot of goods are invoiced in dollars, and they also increase financial stress because countries or corporations that have debt in dollars find that it becomes harder to service them.
There you go.
Now, if you want to think about how countries should address that, our recommendation at this point is that, these movements in the dollar are really reflecting fundamental forces that are at play: the fight against inflation, the energy crisis. And so countries should try to sort of let the exchange rate adjust and accommodate, because it reflects a sort of underlying change in the economy.
Pierre-Olivier Garinchas, the IMF's chief economist, really appreciate your time today. And our thanks to Yahoo Finance's Jen Schomburger as well.
This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 7, verse 19. They shall cast their silver in the streets. times that are coming, people are going to start to cast their silver, their gold, and everything that's concerning Esau, Edom's fiat money, which has no inherent value in the streets because it will be worthless due to hyperinflation. What is inflation? Inflation is the general increase in the cost of goods and services due to the expansion of money supply in the economy and the depreciation of the value of the currency that is used within the economy. So really, it's just the value of the money that is used. It's pretty much dying. And because of that, everything becomes very expensive. Things that you would usually pay $1 for may now cost you $10, $20, $40, $100. That's due to inflation, which turns into hyperinflation if inflation is not controlled. And their gold shall be removed. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh, right? So their silver and their gold, which they put their trust in, is not going to be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh, because you can't pay the Lord gold and silver to get delivered, to get saved. The Lord doesn't care about your money. The Lord created your money, in fact. So he doesn't care about it. This is the book of Sirach 30. Excuse me. Sirach 31, verse 5. He that loveth gold shall not be justified, and he that followeth corruption shall not have enough thereof. Gold had been the ruin of many, and their destruction was present, right? And that's the whole point. Gold had been the ruin of many, because many have put their trust in gold. Many have deified gold as being their God. Okay? That's why the Lord said, for the love of money, not money itself, but for the love of it, is the root of all evil. That's actually a spirit known as mammon. You know, you put mammon as being your trust. You basically say mammon is your God. And because you do that, your destruction will be present and imminent. It will be your ruin. Gold had been the ruin of many, and their destruction was present. It is a stumbling block unto them that sacrifice unto it, and every fool shall be taken therewith. So it's like a net, like a trap. If you put your trust in mammon, it's going to trap you, and it's going to be a stumbling block unto you. That's why it's not going to be able to deliver you from the day of the wrath of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. As it is written here in Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 19. It says, their gold and their silver shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh. They shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels. Why? Because it is a stumbling block of their iniquity. And didn't we just read that in Sirach, the 31st chapter? It is a stumbling block of their iniquity. So their money will not be able to fill their minds with comfort and relief from the evils to come, from all the hell that the Lord is going to bring upon this earth. Because the Lord said, because their pride, the city shall be destroyed, the house shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. And many great misery shall be done unto them that in the latter times have walked in great pride upon the earth. Roughly paraphrasing the scripture in 2nd Ezra, what is that? I believe it's 8. So judgment is coming, man. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I'll conclude the lesson here. You know, forgive me for the voice. You know, I've been under the weather, the week. So with that, I say shalom to the elect. Yahweh Bashem Yahushai Bashem Achakudash Brakatam to the elect.